My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old, an elementary school teacher in Austin, Texas. If I had to sum myself up in one word, it would be resilient. Too resilient, maybe. I've spent most of my life swallowing pain, convincing myself I could handle anything if I just stayed strong. But nothing prepared me for the day my stepmother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Sarah, you need to understand something. From now on, my kids are your father's children, not you." She tried to erase me, wanted to replace me in my own family, and for a while, I almost let her. If you're here, thank you for listening to my story. Please like and subscribe. It truly helps me keep sharing these kinds of truths, and it means more than you know. But let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were being pushed out of your own family? Like someone new stepped in, and suddenly, you weren't welcome in the very place that built you? Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I promise I read them all. All right, let me take you back. Back before the betrayal, before the humiliation, before the revenge. Let me show you how it all began. Growing up, it was just me and my dad. My mom passed when I was only 9 years old, cancer taking her before she even turned 40. My dad did everything he could to fill that void. He wasn't perfect. Some nights dinner was just cereal and milk, and he forgot school picture, day more times than I can count. But he loved me fiercely. He worked long hours as an electrician, but somehow always made time for me. He came to every recital, every science fair. When I had nightmares, he'd sit by my bed until I fell back, asleep. He used to say, "It's you and me, kid." Always. And I believed him, for years it was, until Linda showed up. I still remember the first time I met her. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table with my homework spread out, when Dad walked in, nervous but smiling. "Sarah," he said, clearing his throat, "I want you to meet someone special." And there she was. Linda. Perfect hair, expensive perfume, the kind of smile that felt more like an evaluation than a greeting. "Hi, Sarah," she said, her voice smooth. "Your father's told me so much about you." I forced a smile back. "Nice to meet you." But even then, something in my stomach twisted. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. She was sweet enough around Dad, asking me about school, bringing over desserts she just happened to bake. But there was an edge under it all. A subtle sharpness in the way she'd correct me, the way she'd sigh when Dad wasn't looking. Like the time I tried to show her a scrapbook I'd made with Mom's old photos. She flipped through a few pages, then set it down with a polite smile. "It's nice, Sarah," she said lightly, "but your father needs to move forward. Living in the past isn't healthy." I wanted to scream, "This isn't the past. This is my mom." But I stayed quiet, too resilient. When they married a year later, I tried. I really did. I stood by my dad's side in a pale blue dress, forcing a smile as Linda's 2 kids, Jake and Mia, trailed behind her like shadows. Everyone said how beautiful the family looked together. But in the photos, you can see it in my eyes. I already felt like an outsider in my own story. I didn't know then just how far Linda would go. How she'd chip away at me piece by piece until I was almost invisible in my own father's house. But I do know this. She underestimated me, because no matter how much pain I swallowed, no matter how many times I stayed quiet, I was still watching, and one day I was going to bring the truth out into the light. After Mom passed, my world became small. Just me, Dad, and the house we tried to keep alive with her memory. Her favorite sunflower painting stayed in the hallway, her recipe card sat in the kitchen drawer, and her perfume bottle still lingered on the dresser even though it was empty. Dad was my anchor. He wasn't perfect. He burned grilled cheese. More times than I can count, and sometimes he forgot about parent-teacher night until the last minute. But he showed up. Always. When I broke my arm falling off the monkey bars, he slept in the hospital chair 3 nights straight. When I was 12 and terrified about puberty, he awkwardly bought me every product in the store just in case. He'd always say the same line, "It's you and me, kid." Always. I clung to that like a lifeline. Then Linda arrived. She was everything my dad wasn't. Polished, confident, put together. She worked in real estate, drove a sleek black SUV, and wore jewelry that sparkled under every light. Compared to Dad's worn jeans and calloused hands, she looked like she'd stepped out of another world entirely. At first, Dad seemed happier. He laughed more, shaved before dinners, and even bought a new shirt that wasn't from the bargain bin. I wanted that for him. I wanted to see him smile. So when he said he was serious about Linda, I bit down on my unease and nodded. Linda came with baggage, 2 kids of her own. Jake, who was 14 at the time, was quiet and brooding. And Mia, who was 10, all energy and constant chatter. "Isn't it wonderful?" Dad beamed one night at dinner. "Sarah, you'll have siblings now, a brother and a sister." I forced a smile, but inside I felt the floor tilt. I hadn't asked for siblings. I hadn't asked for any of this. Still, I told myself maybe it would be okay. Maybe they'd feel like family, too. The wedding was small but fancy. Linda wore a satin gown that shimmered under the lights, her kids in matching outfits. Dad looked nervous but proud. I stood by his side in a pale blue dress, holding a bouquet that felt too heavy in my hands. Everyone said how perfect we looked together. A blended family, they called it. The new beginning Dad deserved. But in the photos, I can see the truth. My smile didn't reach my eyes. In the beginning, things seemed manageable. Jake mostly stayed in his room, blasting music and rolling his eyes when Linda nagged him about homework. Mia followed me everywhere, wanting to braid my hair, giggling at everything I said. Linda played the role of doting stepmother perfectly, at least in front of Dad. She made lasagna, organized family outings, and asked me about school. But there was always an undertone, a way she'd slip comments in that seemed harmless on the surface, but sharp underneath. Like the night she walked past my mom's sunflower painting and said, "This would look better with something modern," or the time she was packing lunches, and casually remarked, "Sarah, maybe you should let me handle things from now on. Kids need consistency." By kids, she meant her kids. Dad didn't notice. He was blinded by love, or maybe just relief. After years of grief, he finally had someone to share the load with. "Isn't Linda amazing?" he'd ask me. "She makes this house feel alive again." I'd smile, swallow my unease, and stay quiet. Too resilient, too determined to keep the peace. But each time I stayed quiet, Linda pushed a little harder. The real shift began with space. Slowly, corners of the house that once felt like mine began to disappear. My mom's baking tools vanished from the kitchen drawers. The photo of me and Dad at my 10th birthday was moved from the mantel to the hallway, and then to a box in the garage. Jake's baseball trophies and Mia's school art projects filled the shelves instead. It was as if Linda was rearranging not just the house, but the narrative. One where I was a side character in my own home. Dad still loved me. I knew that. But love can be clouded when someone whispers in your ear every day. Linda's voice was always there, smooth, insistent, patient. And I started to feel it. The distance. The way Dad's eyes lit up more when Mia showed him a drawing than when I told him about my straight A's. The way Jake's baseball games suddenly mattered more than my debate tournaments. I told myself not to be jealous, not to be petty, but deep down, I knew what was happening. Linda wasn't just blending a family, she was rewriting it, and she was planning to erase me. At first, it was subtle, small enough that I could pretend I was imagining things. Linda had a way of smiling while she cut me down, like every jab was wrapped in sugar. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs and found her rearranging the living room shelves. My mom's sunflower painting, the one Dad swore would always hang in the hallway, was leaning against the wall. "Linda, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She smiled without looking up. "Just redecorating, sweetheart. We want the house to feel fresh, don't we?" I froze. "That's my mom's painting." She tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "I know, but it doesn't really fit with the new family vibe. Maybe it's time we let go of the past." My fists clenched, but before I could answer, Dad walked in, coffee mug in hand. "Looks great, doesn't it, Sarah?" he said, glancing at the half-empty shelves. "Linda has such a good eye." I swallowed my words. Too resilient. Too afraid to cause a scene. That was the beginning. Then came the birthday party. Dad had promised to take me out for dinner, just the two of us. We hadn't had time together in weeks, and I was desperate for it. But that morning, Linda announced cheerfully, "I planned something better. We'll all go to Jake's baseball game instead. Family first." Dad looked torn, but Linda slid her arm through his. "We can celebrate Sarah after. She'll understand." Everyone cheered for Jake that night. I sat on the bleachers, my birthday, dress hidden under a coat, while Dad shouted himself hoarse for a son who wasn't even his by blood. Nobody sang happy birthday. Linda was clever, too. She didn't just push me out physically, she planted seeds in Dad's head. One evening I overheard them in the kitchen. "She doesn't respect me," Linda whispered. "She slams doors. She ignores my rules. It's not healthy for the little ones." Dad sighed. "She's just adjusting. Give her time." Linda lowered her voice, but I caught the last words. "Or maybe she doesn't want this family to work." I pressed my ear to my bedroom door, heart pounding. It wasn't true. I did want us to work. I just wanted my place to stay intact. But Linda was rewriting me into the villain of her story, and Dad was listening. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Jake's trophies lined the shelves where my debate medals once sat. Mia's drawings were pinned on the fridge where my report cards used to be. Even little things. My favorite cereal, the blanket Mom had crocheted, the framed photo of Dad holding me as a toddler, disappeared, replaced by Linda's choices. Each piece stolen felt like a thread pulling loose from the life I knew. It wasn't just the house. It was Dad. He stopped asking about my grades, stopped making time for our Sunday morning breakfasts. When I reminded him about our traditions, he smiled distractedly and said, "We're all busy now, kid. You know I love you." I did know. But love without attention feels like neglect. And every time Linda's kids got what I lost, it felt like proof that maybe I wasn't really part of the family anymore. The worst moment came during Thanksgiving. Family gathered around the long table, turkey steaming, laughter bouncing off the walls. I was carving slices for Mia when Linda raised her glass. "I just want to say how thankful I am for this family," she said warmly. "Jake and Mia finally have the father they deserve." The room clapped, smiled, nodded. I dropped the carving, knife, my hands shaking. Dad didn't correct her. He didn't even look at me. I felt invisible. That night, I lay awake in my bed staring at the ceiling, hearing her words echo in my skull. The father they deserve. She wasn't just trying to blend families. She was trying to replace me, and the terrifying thing was, it was working. By the time Christmas rolled around, I already felt like a guest in my own house. Linda had filled the tree with shiny new ornaments from her side of the family. My mom's snowflake, the one she bought the year I was born, was nowhere to be found. When I asked about it, Linda shrugged. Maybe it broke. These things happen. But I knew it hadn't. I'd kept it safe for years. She'd hidden it. Just like everything else that carried my mom's memory. Dad's birthday came in January, and that was the night everything shattered. Linda planned a big party at the house. Relatives, neighbors, and even co-workers of Dad's crowded the living room. She loved the spotlight, and this was her stage. I tried to make myself useful, setting out plates, checking drinks. I wanted Dad to notice me, to see I was still part of this family. When it came time for speeches, Linda stood by his side, holding his hand, her kids on either side like they were posed for a family photo. She raised her glass. "To my husband," she said sweetly, "the best father Jake and Mia could ever ask for." Applause erupted. Everyone smiled. I froze. I waited for Dad to add my name, to say, "And Sarah, of course." But he didn't. He just smiled, squeezed Linda's hand, and kissed her cheek. It was like a punch to the chest. Then Linda turned to the crowd, her voice carrying, "I truly believe families aren't about blood. They're about who shows up, who matters, who belongs, and Jake and Mia belong to him now. We are one family, whole." Her eyes flicked to me just for a second. I felt the knife twist. She wasn't just celebrating, she was erasing me, and everyone clapped. I dropped my glass. It shattered against the tile, the sound slicing through the applause. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My face burned, my throat closed. Linda gasped dramatically. "Sarah, dear, are you all right?" Her tone was sugar, but her smirk told the truth. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Dad stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Kid, maybe you should sit down," he murmured, not defending me, not correcting her, just brushing me aside. My vision blurred. I turned and ran upstairs before the tears could fall in my room. I pressed my back against the door, my whole body shaking. I could still hear the laughter downstairs, the clinking glasses, Linda's voice floating up like poison. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just being sidelined. I was being replaced. And the worst part? My own father was letting it happen. I cried until my throat ached. But somewhere between the sobs, a thought pushed through. If she could take everything from me in front of everyone, then one day, in front of everyone, I would take it back. After Dad's birthday party, I didn't feel like his daughter anymore. I stayed in my room while the celebration carried on downstairs. Through the floorboards, I could still hear the clinking of glasses, the bursts of laughter, Linda's voice carrying like poison in the air. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run downstairs and yell, "I'm his child, not you, not them, me." But I didn't. I sat on my bed, fists clenched, tears burning down my face, too shattered to move. The days after were worse. Dad avoided bringing up what happened. He acted like it had all been some misunderstanding, like my pain was just me being too sensitive. When I tried to explain, my voice trembling, he sighed. "Sarah, you need to understand. Families change. You're grown now. Jake and Mia need me more than you do." His words cut deeper than Linda's, because for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the man saying them. This was the same dad who once told me, "It's you and me, kid, always." Now it was, "They need me more than you do." Linda took the opportunity and ran with it. She started introducing Jake and Mia as our kids in public. At church, at family barbecues, and even to old family friends who had known me since. I was born. And me? I was just Sarah. Not his kid. Not part of the picture. Just an afterthought. The worst blow came when I overheard a conversation in Dad's office. Linda's voice, low but firm. "It doesn't make sense for Sarah to be in the will. She's an adult. She has her own life. But Jake and Mia? They're still young. They deserve security." I pressed my ear to the door, my stomach dropping. Dad's voice came after a pause. I don't know, Linda. That doesn't feel right." "Don't you want to protect your family?" she countered smoothly. "The ones who live here? The ones who need you?" "Family. The ones who live here. Not me." I stumbled back from the door, shaking. My chest felt hollow. Linda wasn't just trying to erase me emotionally. She wanted to erase me legally, permanently. That night, I broke. I curled up in bed, sobbing into the pillow until my throat ached. Every memory of Dad's love, every tradition with Mom, every promise I'd clung to. It all felt like lies now. For hours, I let the grief swallow me whole. But somewhere between the sobs, another emotion rose. Anger. Because I realized something. Resilience wasn't enough anymore. I had been too quiet, too patient, too willing to take the blows, hoping Dad would eventually see. But he didn't. If I wanted the truth to come out, I couldn't wait for him to notice. I had to show him, and not just him. Everyone. I wiped my tears, sat up in bed, and stared at the sunflower painting I'd hidden in my closet, the one Linda tried to erase. That painting wasn't just a memory of my mom. It was proof. Proof that I belonged. Proof that no matter how hard Linda tried, she couldn't erase me. And that's when the idea began to form. I would fight back. I would gather proof of her lies, her manipulation, the way she twisted Dad against me. And when the time was right, I'd expose her in front of the very people she wanted to impress most. That night as the house slept, I whispered to myself, "You tried to replace me, Linda, but you're the replaceable one. And I'll prove it." Once the tears dried, my vision sharpened. I realized resilience wasn't enough. I couldn't just endure anymore. I had to act. If Linda wanted to erase me from my own family, then I would show everyone exactly who she was. And I would do it in a way she couldn't wriggle out of. Not with her smiles, not with her manipulations, not with her poison whispered into my father's ear. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. The first step was gathering. I began paying attention to everything, her words, her actions, the contradictions. I started small. I collected receipts left lying around, expensive spa days, jewelry, and business expenses charged to Dad's credit card without his knowledge. Then I noticed the way she spoke to people when Dad wasn't around. Neighbors, family friends. Always dropping hints that Jake and Mia are his real kids now. So I started recording, quietly, on my phone, slipping it into my pocket whenever her tone turned sharp. "Sarah doesn't respect me. She doesn't belong here. You know, Dan's will needs to reflect his real family." Hearing those words played back later made my stomach twist, but they also steeled my resolve. The second step was allies. At first, I thought I was alone. But when I reached out, I realized I wasn't. My aunt, Dad's sister, had noticed too. She told me quietly over coffee, "Linda's always got something to say about you, honey. She tries to sound innocent, but I can tell she's planting seeds." Neighbor admitted Linda had told her, "It's like Sarah doesn't even count anymore. My kids are all Dan needs." Their outrage gave me strength. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't crazy. Linda's mask was slipping, just not in front of Dad. Yet the third step was choosing the stage. I knew it had to be public. Private confrontations hadn't worked. Dad always brushed them off as me being emotional. No, I needed a moment where Linda couldn't hide, where the weight of evidence would be undeniable, where Dad would see the truth with his own eyes. And then the perfect opportunity appeared, our annual spring family dinner. Dozens of relatives would be there, uncles, cousins, family friends. The same people Linda had tried so hard to charm, the same audience she used to polish her image as the perfect wife and mother. That was where I'd strike. The fourth step was preparation. I printed the receipts, organized the recordings, and gathered testimonies. I even found the sunflower painting Linda had tried to lose, tucked away in the basement behind boxes of her kids' old toys. That painting would be my symbol, my mother's presence. Proof that I wasn't a ghost to be erased. I rehearsed what I'd say over and over, standing in front of the mirror, not trembling, not crying, calm, precise. I promised myself, no matter how she tried to twist it, I would hold steady. But planning revenge doesn't just come with clarity, it comes with fear. There were nights I lay awake, heart pounding, wondering, what if Dad still takes her side? What if this backfires and I lose him completely? The thought terrified me, but then I'd look at the painting, or play back one of her recordings, or reread the texts from my aunt telling me, "You're not alone in this." And I'd remember. The truth was stronger than her lies. By the time the dinner came around, I was ready. Linda thought she had already won. She paraded around the kitchen in a silk blouse, barking orders, telling Jake and Mia how to set the table just right. When she saw me walk in holding the painting under my arm, her eyes flickered. Just for a second. But I saw it. Fear. "Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What are you doing with that old thing?" I smiled, steady. "Oh, you'll see." And in that moment, I knew. She had no idea what was coming. The days leading up to the spring family dinner felt like walking a tightrope. Linda still strutted around the house with her usual smugness, but I could tell she sensed something was off. Maybe it was the way I watched her more closely. Maybe it was the painting leaning against my bedroom wall, waiting for its moment. Either way, she couldn't resist her little jabs. And this time, I didn't let them land the same way. The first shift happened at breakfast. Linda sat across from Dad, stirring her coffee like she was spinning a web. "Dan," she said casually, "Jake needs new baseball gear. It would be smart to use that savings account you set up. After all, these kids are your future." Her eyes flicked to me. A challenge. Normally, I would have stayed quiet, but not this time. "Actually," I said evenly, setting down my fork, "that account was originally started for my college fund. Remember, Dad?" Dad blinked, surprised. "That's true." Linda's smile froze, just for a second. She recovered quickly. "Well, things change. We adapt." But I saw it, that tiny crack in her perfect composure. Small win, the second, came later that week. I was in the garage rummaging through boxes when Mia wandered in. She glanced around nervously before whispering, "Mom says we shouldn't talk to you. But I don't think that's fair." My heart softened. "Why would she say that?" Mia bit her lip. "She says you don't belong, but you're nice to me. You help with homework. You feel like a sister." Her words nearly undid me. I crouched down, pulling her into a quick hug. "Thank you, Mia," I whispered. "And don't worry, the truth has a way of coming out." Another small win. Because if even Linda's own kids were questioning her, her control wasn't as airtight as she thought. The third came the night before the dinner. Linda was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice sharp. "Yes, I'll handle it. Once the will is finalized, Sarah won't even be a factor." I stepped into the doorway, arms crossed. She nearly dropped the phone when she saw me. "Who are you talking to?" I asked calmly. She forced a laugh. "Just a client. Real estate business." I smiled. Not the sweet, compliant smile she was used to, but something sharper. "You should be more careful, Linda. Walls have ears." Her face paled. For once, she didn't have a comeback, another small win. Each little victory steadied. Me, for years, I'd been shrinking under her shadow, swallowing my pain, convincing myself to endure. But now, with every crack I exposed, every lie I caught, I grew taller. And Linda? She was starting to see it. The day of the family dinner arrived, and the house buzzed with preparation. Relatives poured in, laughter spilling through the halls. Linda flitted from guest to guest, her smile stretched tight, her voice an octave. Too high, but I noticed the glances she threw my way. Quick, nervous, calculating. She knew something was coming. And that fear? That was my biggest small win yet. The night of the family dinner, the house glowed like a stage set. Golden light from the chandelier spilled across the long dining table. Candles flickered, glasses sparkled, and laughter echoed through the air, to anyone walking in. It looked perfect. A picture of harmony. But beneath the surface, tension coiled tight. Because tonight wasn't just a dinner. Tonight was my moment. I carried my mother's sunflower painting into the living room before the guests sat down. Some relatives noticed immediately. "Sarah, is that your mom's?" my aunt asked softly, her eyes widening. I nodded, setting it against the mantel where it belonged. "Yes, it deserves to be here." Linda froze across the room, her wine glass, midair. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her mask had its first crack, and everyone saw it. Dinner began. Linda played hostess, filling plates, laughing a little too loudly, clinging to Dad's arm like she was staking a claim. But I waited. I let her bask. I let her feel secure, because the fall would sting more if she thought she was safe. Finally, when the plates were cleared and the chatter slowed, I stood. "I'd like to say something," I said, my voice steady, carrying across the table. Every head turned. Linda's smile faltered. "Sarah, maybe this isn't the—" "No." I cut her off gently but firmly. "It is." I walked to the mantel, resting my hand on Mom's painting. For years, I've watched pieces of this house, and pieces of me, be pushed aside. Photos boxed up, memories erased. And for a while, I stayed silent. Too silent. The room shifted. People leaned forward. But silence lets lies grow. And I think it's time you all saw the truth. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, receipts, recordings, printouts, my velvet gift. My hands didn't shake as I laid them on the table. "This," I said, holding up a receipt, "is a spa trip charged to my dad's account." While she told him it was a business expense, murmurs rippled. "This," I continued, playing a recording from my phone, "is Linda telling a neighbor I don't belong here, that her kids are Dad's real children." Gasps. Eyes darted between us. Linda's face turned pale, then red. "That's taken out of context." I spoke over her, my voice calm, controlled. "And this," I said, lifting another page, "is a copy of a conversation about Dad's will, where she suggested I be cut out entirely." The room fell silent. Dad's eyes widened, color draining from his face. He looked at Linda, then at me, then back at Linda again. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice shaking. Linda stood abruptly, her chair scraping. "She's lying. She's jealous. She's always been jealous. She's trying to destroy this family." But her words rang hollow now. Everyone had heard the recordings. Everyone had seen the proof. My aunt spoke up first, her voice sharp. "I knew something was off. Sarah's been treated like a stranger in her own home." Others nodded, murmuring agreement, and in that moment, the tide turned. Linda's kids sat frozen. Jake looked down at his plate, ashamed. But Mia, sweet Mia, whispered, "It's true. Mom told us not to talk to Sarah. She said she didn't matter." The room erupted in whispers, shocked glances, and shaking heads. Dad stood slowly, his jaw clenched. He looked at Linda, his voice low but thunderous. "How could you?" Linda sputtered, her mask cracking into pieces. She grabbed her bag, her voice rising shrilly. "You'll regret this. All of you." But no one stopped her as she stormed out, the door slamming behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of candle flames. Then Dad turned to me. His eyes glistened. "Sarah." "I'm so sorry." I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood taller, my mother's sunflower painting behind me, the truth finally out. For years, Linda tried to replace me. But tonight, in front of everyone, She replaced herself. The night of the family dinner ended in silence. Not the comfortable kind, with bellies full and laughter trailing off, but the heavy, unsettled kind. The kind that clung to the walls even after the door slammed behind Linda. For a long moment, nobody spoke. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the faint crackle of the candles. Then my aunt reached over, placed her hand on mine, and whispered, "You did the right thing." And just like that, the room exhaled. In the days that followed, the truth spread faster than I could have imagined. Relatives who had once smiled politely at Linda now called me, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. "I thought she was helping your dad," one cousin admitted. "I didn't realize she was tearing you down." Neighbors stopped me in the street, shaking their heads. We wondered why she always spoke about her kids like they were the only ones. Now it makes sense. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. People saw me again. But the most important shift was with Dad. The morning after the dinner, he knocked on my bedroom door. "Sarah?" His voice was low, heavy with shame. I opened the door, unsure what to expect. He stood there, his eyes red, his shoulders sagging. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I should have listened," he whispered. I let her make me doubt my own daughter. Tears burned in my eyes, but I held them back. "You hurt me, Dad. Worse than she ever could." He nodded, his chin trembling. "I know, and I don't know if I can ever fix that. But I want to try." For the first time in months, I let him hug me. His arms were familiar, worn, safe, and I realized I'd missed them more than I'd admitted. Linda didn't take her downfall quietly. She tried to spin the story, called relatives, told them I'd faked the evidence, insisted I was just a jealous daughter who couldn't handle sharing. But the proof was too strong. The recordings, the receipts, Mia's soft confession at the table, it all stood against her. Even Jake, who had once rolled his eyes at me, stopped defending her. He came by one evening, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Mom, she made us believe things about you. But Mia was right. You're not the enemy." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. Slowly, life shifted back into balance. Dad took the painting and rehung it in the hallway where it belonged. He dug out the boxes of photos Linda had tucked away and placed them back on the shelves. Our house looked like ours again. I started to see flickers of the father I grew up with, the one who showed up at every recital, the one who whispered, "It's you and me, kid." And though things weren't perfect, I knew one thing: Linda hadn't won. One evening, weeks later, I sat in the living room with Mia. She curled up beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. "Do you think Mom's mad at me?" she asked quietly. I stroked her hair. "She might be. But that's not your fault, Mia. None of this is." She nodded, her small voice trembling. "I'm glad you're here. It feels safer." My throat tightened. In that moment, I realized Linda hadn't just failed to replace me. She had pushed her own children further away, and the space she tried to erase me from, I had filled it back, stronger than before. Linda tried to write me out of the story, but the truth had been louder, and in the aftermath, it wasn't me who disappeared. It was her. Sometimes I walk down the hallway now and pause in front of Mom's sunflower painting. The sunlight from the window catches it just right, and for a moment, it feels like she's still here, watching, smiling. For years, Linda tried to erase that painting, erase my place, erase me. But in the end, she only erased herself. My dad and I still have scars. Trust doesn't snap back overnight. Sometimes, when he hesitates before answering me, I wonder if he still hears her voice in his head. But then he'll reach out, squeeze my hand, and whisper, "It's you and me, kid." And little by little, I believe him again. Here's the truth I've learned. People can try to replace you. They can push you aside, manipulate, lie, and even convince others that you don't belong. But belonging isn't something they can take away. It's written in your history, in your memories, in the love that survives manipulation. And the truth? The truth always finds its way out. Linda thought she was strong because she had control. But real strength isn't in control. It's in resilience. It's in refusing to disappear, even when someone tries to silence you. And when the truth came out, she lost everything she had built on lies. While I got my family back. If you've listened this far, thank you. Really. Please like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing these stories with you. But more importantly, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been replaced or made to feel invisible by someone who should have loved you? Have you ever fought to reclaim your place? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And your words matter here. And let me know where you're watching from. Because sometimes it helps to remember we're not alone, no matter how far apart we are. To the girl I was, sitting in her room that night, believing she'd lost everything. You didn't. You survived. And to anyone listening who feels erased right now, you haven't been replaced. You are still here, and the truth will always, always be louder than the lies.